Are you on? Why am I not?
It's you're. Hi, folks. The actual broadcast is like 8 seconds, 10 seconds behind.
All right. Welcome in this evening, and at 6 o'clock, special guest in tonight, Wayne Viener. I thank him for coming in. This is such a big show tonight, as there's a turnover at the University of Maryland. So, Wayne, we thank you for coming in. Got so much to talk about. I'm not sure where we start, but obviously it's the end of the Randy Edsall era.
Well, yeah, the Edsall era ends on sort of a down note with the way he left the program. But he's been, as you have said many times, he's been a good friend to our show, and I think he did the best he could do. Just wasn't enough wins on the field. He did great with the academics, made a lot of inroads in recruiting, but I know you've got a lot of personal feelings about how this went down.
Well, when you get to know somebody and the guy comes on your show whenever you want, and, I've had an opportunity to, dine with him a few times and play golf with him, and, always upbeat. I've seen how he worked, how hard he worked. He was tireless, never stopped recruiting, never took a day off. I mean, who could be happy about it? And the other thing is forget that, the uncertainty that it brings. Now, there's a lot of positive feelings out there in Terp land because, it's a new start, a new beginning. But Wayne, anytime you have that, there's calls for how long is it going to take? What's going to happen? Who's going to come in? Who's right? Who's wrong?
Who's coming? Who's going? Who's going to commit? Who's going to leave the program?
And we saw Andre Lyndon Johnson leave, a great guy. And I know you're very tight with Fran Foley.
Fran Foley was a good guy.
He was a good guy.
He knew who we were. You see him on the sidelines. I'm down there taking pictures or running with the video camera.
Yeah, and those when we would see Fran Foley, he'd say, "Hey guys, why don't you get Stefan?" Or why don't you?
Yeah.
He was always positive about the show, and they're good friends. And what are you going to do? You move on. They didn't win enough. It's that simple. You just didn't win enough. And now that Randy's gone, everybody's piling on, which I find absurd. He's gone. Let's move on.
Right. There are people, and I know Freddie and the other people listen hate this part, but I always come back to there's people who never write about Maryland. Suddenly they're national experts on what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
And everybody has an opinion who the next coach is going to be and whether this was good or bad.
Most of all, being you. I mean, that's all we've talked about since it happened. And I've gone through the gamut of guys I want now, knowing there's no prayer for them.
Right.
So,
it's certainly a different list who you want versus who's actually going to show up.
Well, look, at the same weekend, Steve Spurrier, the old ball coach, he leaves, retires. Steve Sarkisian leaves USC, which certainly presents a picture of a school that might be higher up on the food chain than Maryland.
Might be. It's USC.
Except for one thing. Everybody who's going there, it hasn't been a bed of roses. I mean, Pete Carroll went, he didn't exactly leave in a blaze of glory.
No, Pete Carroll made it look, because of his personality, like it was easy to win there. It's the greatest place in the world to be. Then they bring in, Kiffin comes in after that, right? And then Ed Ogeron comes in, and then Sarkisian comes in, and the last three guys that have the job didn't do so well. Pat Hayden feeling the pressure now that he hasn't been able to pick a winner after Pete Carroll.
Right. I mean, you're 100% on the nose, and so why is that such a glorious job?
Because it's LA. You play
I'm not arguing with you.
It's the pro team in Los Angeles.
I'm not arguing with you. But of course, Jim Moore has done a great job at UCLA. And Sarkisian is a great coach. He just has a problem. All right. It's really sad that somebody who makes that kind of money and has that kind of position can let alcohol and substance abuse.
It happens to everybody.
Yeah.
It almost brings up what happened to Lamar Odom yesterday.
That
happens to people that you'd never expect.
Lamar Odom apparently on life support now.
Yeah,
life support.
Do
you come off of life support ever?
In a positive way?
No, I mean,
not. No. Yeah, I'm sure there's somebody's come back from being on life support, but it seems pretty critical.
Yeah, and it's really sad. A guy with all that he had, all the talent, and he's been on a downhill spiral. And you're right. You don't know what's going to happen or who's subject to depression or alcoholism or drug abuse. And let's move on. But so now let's talk about some of the guys who could turn out to be
Oh,
coaches.
look how happy.
Yeah, well, it's fun. I mean, it's fun to talk about that. The damage is done. Randy's
Right.
gone. The dirty work's over. He went out. I mean, how it happened.
Okay,
We're all sick about it, and the way it happened. And even Kevin apologized to Randy
Right.
for how it went down. But we're not going to go into that because.
Beaten to death, and
Right.
it's Wednesday, so let's move on.
All right, let's start off with a guy I've been talking about that you tell me I'm crazy. All right, which is normal, and, whatever. And that, of course, is Lane Kiffin. All right. Now, this is why I think Lane Kiffin is a possibility. All right.
Yeah.
Number one, he's been with Saban now for 2 years. Good things. Being with Saban as an assistant coach, and he's done a good job there.
Ding, that's an A. That's
All right.
a good one.
Right, that's a real good one. Had some success in college. Okay. Well, he's had some success. I mean, he left programs like a dog. All right, which is going to be your argument. Number three, he's a great recruiter. He is known as a great recruiter. Big factor, very big factor. He could come in here right away and help with the recruiting system. His name, his persona has some pizzazz to it. And there's always the chance you could get his dad to come in to coach the defense.
That didn't work so well. All right, so I give you an A that he's been with Saban,
Right.
and that he seems to know offense pretty well, maybe 2 A's. Great recruiter. It's an A. Unfortunately, on the report card from my side, the fact that he's left some programs that really counted on him. He had a bad ending with the Raiders, Oakland Raiders. He had a horrible ending with Tennessee, where I think they were burning him in effigy as he left town. The USC thing didn't go well, and I think because of his dad and because of the Kiffin name, he got another chance with Saban. I just wouldn't trust if he came here, he'd stay here more than 6 weeks before he figured someplace else was better.
Well, I don't know. I think the guy's been knocked down a few pegs. All right, and Nick Saban saved his career,
Yeah.
and now he's kind of like back. So he'd have to sell himself to Kevin Anderson. Now let's move on to the guy you love. I think you love it. That's Tom Herman from Houston.
Like Tom Herman.
Now he's only been there a year.
Been there a year. He was the top guy for.
So
Ohio
if he
State.
leaves,
Mhm.
you're going to say, why would he stay in Maryland?
I think that he'd really like to get back in the Big Ten. I'm not sure he really wants to compete head-to-head with Urban Meyer because he was with that program a long time. So I'm not sure he'd actually come here after being 1 year in Houston, 1 year out of the.
But you
Ohio State
understand my
program.
point? In other words, everybody wants Tom Herman. Yeah, he's a great coach, or it seems like he is.
Right.
Except there was a guy who'd be abandoning a program within
After
a
1
year.
year. So there's no way out of that.
Well, I mean,
Anybody we get who isn't unemployed is going to leave someplace. The question I have is whether I think he'd stay here for more than a couple minutes. If for Lane Kiffin, I think if a better job, a big job opened up because of his track record, he'd be gone. Maybe Tom Herman would stay here a couple years before he moved on. Maybe Maryland would build a new stadium. Maybe something else would happen. That's why I'm a little more. Tom Herman to me is almost a reach because he's only been at Houston.
well, who's
for a
your
year.
guy then?
I would probably. I'm still in that MAC group.
We've been through this.
We've been through. The reason you wouldn't take a MAC guy
It's
is
not high enough profile.
not high enough profile. Okay, so here's a scenario, and I understand that all those MAC guys aren't household names. When Maryland hired Gary Williams, Carolina had Dean Smith, Duke had Krzyzewski. Gary Williams wasn't the Gary Williams you know today. Now,
He was a
one player.
pretty big hire coming from Ohio State.
Yeah, he did American, BC, and Ohio State.
Correct.
He was pretty good at
And
Ohio State.
alumni,
And well, that's the big plus.
and known as a good coach.
Well, all these guys, Campbell, Babbers, Herman's, all known as really good.
Yeah, but
coaches.
they're not Big Ten guys. Gary was in the Big East and the Big Ten.
Well, I
He
can't.
had coached on every level.
My point still is that Gary Williams wasn't the Gary Williams that was there 20 years. I think Maryland football is not where Maryland basketball is, and you're going to end up still with a guy who's coming out of the middle that you hope does very well, stays here for 5 to 10 years, and builds the program again. I am still short on names of really established guys that will pull off your dream, probably my dream too, that you'd have a guy instantly that comes in that's as good as a Harbaugh or as good as an Urban Meyer or D'Antonio that brings that cachet today and that would stay here.
Again, we right now are being streamed live for any reason you want to see us instead of listen to us, I'm not sure why. We're on TerpTalk.com. Are we on CapitalSports.com?
No, we'll be on Capital Sports Blog later tonight.
Right, we're on TerpTalk.com right now and YouTube and whatever, and you can just watch it later. But anyway, all right, now let's get back to some more guys that I've talked about with you, all right? And these are the assistants in the NFL who are, a couple are assistants, and one who I like a lot, and that's the offensive coordinator for the New England Patriots, and that's Josh McDaniel, who now coaches Tom Brady. To me, this guy, he was unsuccessful at Denver, all right? Probably wants a head coaching job.
And he was at New England before he was at Denver.
Right.
And now he's back at New England.
Right. And to me, he's a great quarterback coach, although you can't give him credit for Brady. But he just seems, gets me respect for him. When he was let go by Denver, if I remember correctly, Belichick brought him in before the season ended, all right, to help with the offense or observe the offense. Pretty sure about that.
Okay.
So to me, Josh McDaniel, all right, with his NFL chops, his relationship with Brady, great recruiter, would bring a lot of pizzazz to the position, along with a guy who's very well known in the area, who probably got the most out of a rookie quarterback that almost anybody ever has, and that is Kyle Shanahan.
You see, McDaniels, for some reason, makes more sense than Shanahan.
That's because you got this DC thing.
No,
blaming him for the Redskins.
No, I'm not blaming him. I think he's going to be the next. He's going to be the hot name at the end of this season. Right now, he's with Atlanta to be the next head coach of NFL. He went in. He could work miracles with RG3. Look at what Atlanta's doing with his tutelage on offense. He's going to have an NFL job. And as we've discussed, even though we like names like Bill O'Brien and maybe a Shanahan, the NFL is going to pay him more than Maryland's going to pay him right out of the box. You brought up Sean Payton before.
It was a mistake. Sean Payton is going to make $7 million. I didn't know that.
Or 8 or 9. But
right.
I don't know how, when Wallace Lowe the other day, talking to Baltimore's Sun editorial board, said that Maryland's going to be competitive. And right now, the competitive number for a large school, take Kirk Ferentz at Iowa, around $4 million.
Like $4 to $5 million.
Right. So thinking that that's it, that they're not going to come with 8 or 9.
Nothing's wrong with $4 or $5 million.
No, it's amazing how now $4 or $5 million for a football coach doesn't seem that much. I looked up when Duffner came here. That's 15 years ago. Talking about 350,000, 400,000. That's $4 million now.
All right, now we got to talk about the obvious. A good friend of yours, a good friend of mine, somebody we have a lot of respect for. That's Mike Loxley. He's been given a fair shot, all right, to see how he does the rest of this year as the interim head coach. He's got I think you're going to see a lot of interesting aspects to the offense in the final 6 weeks. I like the game against Ohio State that we haven't talked about, that all of a sudden we saw things that we haven't seen in so long.
And we have discussed and asked for Will Likely as a wingback. That was great.
You don't need to play in 15 plays.
No, the one play was cool. Having Perry Hills, I'm not sure, was that Perry Hills or C.J. Brown in the quarterback?
It looked like a right-handed Perry Hills.
Yeah.
C.J.
So to think that was there all the time, but we didn't use it.
Well, he got the most out of Perry Hills this past week.
Right.
He really did.
He turned them into the closest thing since the guy had it at Illinois. It was Juice Williams.
Right.
He's run that style offense, so I expect to see that again.
Now, does the team...
Well, I got one more. Did you like Cockrell in a quarterback?
I thought it was only a wildcat. I thought it was great. That's what he did at Gilman every play.
Yeah.
So you got this. You take advantage of these things. You mix it up. And the Maryland put up 28 points against Ohio State. That's no disgrace.
We try to be objective, but I guarantee you it's a we. Yeah, well, Tish is a Buckeye back there. Has got her hands up in the air. We gave him a game for a while. It was great.
You know
How did you feel? You called me. You were going to hit some golf balls. I got to watch this.
Well, at 21-7, I did my stretching, right? Because I was not going to watch the end of a game that was 45-7. I refused to it.
I guess
when it was 70 degrees and gorgeous outside.
I was going to sit there no matter what.
So I went to the golf course and I'm watching the game. And on the way there, Perry runs for 75 yards and we score. I told my friends, go out without me. I'm not playing for the time being. And then we take the kickoff we go the distance. It's 21-21. I'm flipping out. 5 minutes to go in the third period.
Yeah.
I'm saying, give us a break. Give us something.
Right.
Get a fumble. Do something wrong.
It makes you religious because you start asking God for favors of that.
Yeah, I mean, you look above.
Yeah.
One time, give it to me. One, like in poker, one
Right.
time.
And whoever it was broke out to the left and hit that curl route, and the ball Hills bounced the pass. We punt, and
Whatever. We
That's
lost.
that.
So,
That's
I mean, boom, boom, boom. Before you know it, the game's over. And Randy, as you could tell at that post-game press conference, he wasn't long for the world, okay? By the way, maybe the dumbest question I've ever heard in my
and
life.
that guy, which I believe it was a local guy,
Right? I don't know who it was.
has been to
Comcast.
Maryland games. Yeah, has been to Maryland games. I don't know if he just never watched him warm up, but Randy is
But it
correct.
was a stupid question. It was like, how does it feel to about to get fired? That's what he meant.
What he meant, what I've been told what he meant had to do with what happened at UConn when Randy did leave without saying goodbye, and that he was trying to tie the two together.
That's
I don't know if that's
ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And it just was insulting. And you don't kick a man when he's down. And I certainly wouldn't. But, Randy Edsall leaves with $2.6 million. So, I
Right.
mean.
So there's some other coaches out there that have been on the hot board. The coach at Toledo,
Right.
everybody's been on him. There's a coach at Memphis, I think his last name is Fuente, that has made the list of coaches to look at. Then a guy that I was impressed with, although I've heard there's a lot of reasons, especially because he's a little older, you probably wouldn't hire Dino Babbers from Bowling Green, but he's on the list of people.
Dino Babler's put together an offense that just probably cost Randy his job at the end of the day. Had Maryland beaten Bowling Green and they were sitting at 3-3 instead of 2-4, I'm not so sure he would have gotten the guy. I'm not positive. Meantime, I'm not going to give you this. West Virginia is playing Baylor this week. All right. What do you think the line is on that?
I'm going to go Baylor giving 30.
West Virginia, 21.
Yeah.
To me, that was outrageous.
West Virginia, after they played Maryland, has had a couple of rough games. They got
They lost to Oklahoma and Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State went to overtime, but Carl Joseph, the defensive back who plays the spur role, their top linebackers, hurt out for the season. A freshman took over for WVU. They haven't been the same.
All right, let's head out to our first break. Talk a little Midnight Madness when we come back. This is Bruce Posner. You're listening to Coos Ford Terp Talk. We'll be back in a few minutes here on CBS Sports Radio, 1300. Wayne, got my buddy Dennis Kalatzis on.
That guy has a lot of Ford cars out there, doesn't he?
Unbelievable. Dennis, how you doing? Unbelievable. Hey, who's your best salesman in the world, man? All right, there's no doubt. Everybody I send out there winds up riding Wayne. Everybody. It's almost unbelievable. And all they do is call me up and thank me for hooking them up at Coons Ford and your great staff.
Well, he helped me out. I had a car to sell. So I don't know if you have a car to buy, but he'll help you out. You have a car to sell.
He'll buy anything, right or wrong. You need used cars. I know that.
I appreciate that. I just had a referral about a half an hour ago, and I checked with the manager. I have a big manager, nothing on the finance, and I said, "Yeah, great." That's simple. 30 minutes, done deal.
Unbelievable. All right, Dennis, I have to say that last weekend, maybe one of the worst weekends in Maryland sports in a long time. Randy Edsall getting the axe, and then the Ravens imploding. I mean, it's I don't know how to describe it, but when you go over the moves that happened yesterday, it's almost so many moves that it's hard to believe that we're in the middle of the season.
Yeah, sometimes you got to touch the bottom of the pool, Bruce, and you're not going to win all the time, and particularly with the Ravens, they were due for an adjustment period. And here it is. And interestingly enough, the bottom 8 teams in the NFL record-wise, they all have the most dead money against cap space. So that does factor in. Of course, the Ravens do have the Dennis Pitta money on there, Ray Rice, and a few others that that consumes money, so that they can't replace players without that money. It does hurt.
I don't know what the answer is, but I heard today that Taliaferro went on injured reserve.
Yeah, it's they picked up the kid from the waivers from Miami, Raheem something, I don't know, kid out of Purdue. Supposed to be a pretty good kick returner, but if they're the walking wounded, and we'll see what John Harbaugh does. The one thing is they've been in every game. They haven't been getting blown out, so they're still competitive. It's still a good product. It's not what it was a year or two ago, but still, it's still I'm just glad they're fighting it. The Coach Harbaugh's got him in position to at least win almost every game they've been in this year.
Yeah, and he's certainly not going to let the team quit. And,
No, I don't know.
this thing about the draft pick, they're not playing for a draft pick. That's not the Ravens' way. I guess if they lost the next 7 games, they'd start playing for the draft pick. But
I doubt it. Knowing Coach Harbaugh as we do, he's a competitor. They're going to try to win as many as they can. So even if they finish 6 and 10, they'll still get a relatively high draft pick. But they're not about draft picks. They're not going to tank the season. They're going to, they're flipping out over there at the castle right now. Everybody's very, very testy. They've never been in this position before in their history, and it certainly doesn't feel good. But sometimes you got to crash and figure it out. And the notion that fire Harbaugh, get rid of Flacco or Pease, it's all nonsense. They can't. Who are they going to coach? I mean, if you look at the roster, it's depleted.
it's funny. This guy Trestman's taking a lot of heat, yet we're scoring 30 points a game. And, that's not a bad number, Dennis.
No, but the defense is very porous. We lost our second, third, and fourth defensive backs last week and gave up, a historical number of yards. I mean, when you start putting McCown and Oliver Graham in the same sentence, you got a problem.
You got a major problem. Dennis, one guy who, you and me are huge fans of and good friends with and wish him the best is Torrey Smith. He's got to be pumped for this week.
Oh, yeah, he's got to be pumped, and Anquan Bolden as well. I'm dreading this game. I dreaded it when I started the schedule in the off season, and they're also due. The 49ers have been on a downslide here, just as the Ravens have, and I expect a very competitive, very tough, very difficult game. Colin Kaepernick, I hope it's not he doesn't pick this weekend to break out.
Hey, in your wildest imagination, how in the world could the Ravens be favored this week?
You know what? I guess the Vegas thinks that the Ravens are worse than the Niners. That's the only thing I can think.
The Ravens are 2.5-point favorites.
They shouldn't be. They really shouldn't be.
That's ridiculous.
They should not be. They're going out now. Look, if it was a home game, yes, but they got to fly out to the West Coast. They had an atrocious start to the season out there with losses to Denver and Oakland. The Niners can still run the ball. They can still play some defense. They're not a bad team. And Torrey and Anquan got that game circled. Probably so does Kaepernick, because of the Super Bowl loss. These guys don't forget.
Yeah, let me ask you, Dennis. Wayne and myself been talking about the Knicks head coach of Maryland. When it comes to guys like Josh McDaniels and Eric Mancini, what's that? Mangini, I'm sorry.
Mangenius.
Right, Mangenius. Is there an NFL guy that Maryland could put its eyes on that would be a winner for the Terps?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, Chip Kelly maybe, but Chip Kelly, it looks like he's doing some good things now in Philadelphia. The guys are 10-6 the last 2 seasons. Looks like they're doing some good things, some momentum there after a dismal start to the season. But if it's not Chip Kelly, then I'm not interested in any NFL coach coming to the Terps. I think a younger coach, a guy that can recruit, a guy with a pedigree might be out there. But if it's not Chip Kelly, I don't see who else they can consider. I just don't think it translates well to the NFL back down to college.
On Chip Kelly, Don Marcus, who writes for The Sun, said there's actually some real interest there. I'm not sure who he has as a source, but I'm sure if he says there's interest, he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, but Chip Kelly's got to fail first. I mean, the year's not over yet for the
I
Eagles.
don't disagree with you, but there's talk about him going to USC, but there's definitely something there. If he does tank the season, if they go 8-8, and they have a mutual parting of the ways between him and Jeff Lurie, the owner of the Eagles, of course, he's going to be a very hot commodity. And Maryland, they have to throw a lot of money at him, no matter if it's Maryland or anybody else, to get him to come to their program. But you need a marquee coach at this time. They've got to really get the right guy. They really do.
If the Eagles go 8-8, they could win the NFC East, because that's a very poor. But for real, it's not a joke. 8-8 might take it.
There's a lot of mediocrity out there. Absolutely.
The thing about Chip Kelly is the Eagles gave him the run of the team. They got rid of the general manager. Right. So I agree they have a significant investment in him doing well, because they've really given him the keys to the kingdom.
Are you a Lane Kiffin guy, or was his episode at Tennessee and Oakland just too much to overcome?
Yeah, I think Lane Kiffin has way too much baggage. I'm not a Kiffin guy at all. I think they need a guy that's clean, a guy with no red flags.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see what happens. Dennis, what's going on at Coons Ford? I mean, every time I walk in there and everybody I send there leaves in a car, and there's never an exception.
Well, we're getting like 30 vehicles in a day. We're selling 20. So I told my staff that, we got to change that. It's still a lot of vehicles. We're number one in the whole region producing market share. 153 dealerships. We're number one by long shot right now in volume. Service is through the roof. I mean, I'm thinking about buying them all across the street, maybe building a racetrack around it for customers. Wouldn't that be something?
That would be neat. A good test drive area. You could race those Mustangs around, and Mustang convertibles. Are they still hot, Dennis?
Absolutely. They're very, very hot right now. Our sales manager, Tom Snyder, is in Florida, drives the new GT350, sending us videos. He's out of control. But that's what we're all about. We're all about passion. We're all about the vehicles, and we're all about our customers. 42
miles a gallon on my C-Max hybrid. All I got is positive things to say. Dennis, always great talking to you. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, gentlemen. Go Terps, go Ravens.
All righty. Dennis Kalatzis, of course, on the Sunday Sports Voice and the SundaySportsVoice.com. And we didn't even talk about the draft. We should have said, if we go low, who's your pick?
That's what I've heard for some Ravens fans is if you can't win a couple of games, the next best thing to do is get a really high draft pick and try to make the best out of this.
Now, from what we hear, when Randy was here, he told Trayvon Diggs, that's Stefan's baby brother, that he was not really welcome in Maryland as a wide receiver. Is that correct? Do I have that right?
You have that right. Trayvon Diggs goes to high school in Montgomery County at Avalon. They said they want him as a cornerback only, and they weren't interested in having Trayvon as a wide receiver.
So that opens up Alabama, Ohio State, all the usual guys.
All the usual suspects. You're talking about a top 100 guy. He's a real athlete. And
now Loxley comes in and says, well, it's not me. I changed my mind. We want you as a wide receiver. Now there's tremendous interest from Trayvon. And what's going to happen?
I would assume that he's going to end up being a wide receiver for Maryland. If you've seen Maryland's wide receivers, that'd probably be a good move right now.
All right, do you think that affects Tino Ellis, someone who was already committed and part of the Dwayne Haskins movement?
No, I think Maryland plays three wide receivers a lot. If you get three real speed guys out there, it's only going to open things up. I mean, part of the reason that Diggs was good is because Deion Long was on the other side. So you don't want to just be one wide receiver. Maybe you can ask Steve Smith about that. You want to be part of an effective team.
Your gut feel, all right, is Maryland going to be able to rebound quickly from the Edsall firing? Usually, we're talking 2 or 3 years. We've heard about maybe 1 or 2 kids who've decommitted, but not a lot. Okay?
I don't have a lot. The difference is that Randy Edsall wouldn't let you take another visit if you committed to Maryland. Now, Loxley says if you want to take another visit, go ahead. So you have Keandre Jones, who's the #1 linebacker in the area, goes to good counsel. He's as good a quarterback as Dwayne Haskins is. He's as good a linebacker as Dwayne Haskins is a quarterback. And now the story is he's going to go take some visits. I think you should be a little bit concerned, but not overly. The good counsel guys say that Keandre is a Terp 100% through and through. I'm not sure that's what you asked me, but my answer to the question you asked is I think I've seen it before. Friedgen came in and won with Vander Linden's recruits. If you get the guy and he's good, I think you can win with these recruits. And if we add 1 or 2 more players like a Trayvon Diggs, the now 41st or so ranked recruiting class in America will move up into the hopefully top 25. So no, it might not be next year, but you're starting to build recruiting class on top of recruiting class where you have some good 4- and 5-star guys. Just need somebody to coach them.
Though we are upset, we're also upbeat, all right, because a change is coming, and we have to be upbeat because we love Maryland.
And we have nothing to do with this.
And actually, if we don't have a good football team, it's a long summer and winter for me and Wayne, all right,
Yeah.
Until basketball starts.
Well, basketball
which is something we never like to talk about, like we're waiting for basketball.
Well, I think
and then now we're waiting for basketball.
That leads us to the next segment. Yeah, I was saying I always get on people who say, oh, Maryland football, that just means the calendar starts counting the days to Maryland basketball. I've been a Maryland football fan my whole life. Probably really more than a basketball fan. But hey, basketball, the Georgetown game is on November 17th at 9 o'clock. First home game is Mount St. Mary's on November 12th. I think it's at 7. And I know that's where we're heading for our next segment, so I'll turn it back to you.
Right, and we should say the Penn State game is at 3:30. There are tickets available. All right, definitely. I know they're upstairs, end zone tickets, but, I've sat there a long time, many times. It's fine. So there are tickets available, and got a lot of talk about basketball coming up on the next segment. This is Bruce Posner. You're listening to Coons for Terp Talk. We'll be back here on CBS Sports Radio in a minute or two. The Tish. This is Bruce Posner. We'll talk to you again on Saturday on Coons Ford Presents a Sports Raven, and on Sunday on Science and Kirk Presents in the Nest. Have a great week, everybody. Let's go Ravens and Terps. Get ready for the big one. Remember, Midnight Band this Saturday night.